Anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
So hopefully no one asked this question while I stepped out, and if they did, I apologize, and you can just cut me off. But one of our current companies is that we're working with here at InSITE is sort of a company with a plan to sort of start with the B2B model and then kind of to go B2B to C, B2C eventually. And obviously that's a transition that Seamlessweb has made / is making. And so I wonder if you can talk through sort of some of the challenges you encountered when you were kind of making that transition or building out that new business line.
It is at least from my standpoint, it's a far more complicated transition than I think it might appear from the outside, because when you have an enterprise-focused business, there are certain things that are the most important. Part of it is stability of the system. We became a required tool in the vast majority of our clients, and as a result, you can't necessarily be as innovative with front-end features and some of the bells and whistles that individual consumers want. The converse of that is consumers want user interfaces that are changing with the latest technology and ability to communicate it highly interactively, and essentially to accommodate that requires you to be highly iterative and very agile in your development. And so those two things are sort of in high conflict as just a macro issue. And then additionally, part of our value proposition on the enterprise side was this can become a controlled platform for you. You can have greater transparency over the types of purchases that your people are making. You have real-time reporting that you can run, and you can see everything that all of your people are ordering down to at the item level of detail. Clients like that, and that was a big part of our value proposition. When we launched the consumer application, individual consumers can, in theory, violate all the rules of the company and then potentially submit the order in via reimbursement form or what have you, meaning some companies, you could either use our system or you could order on your own personal credit card and submit the system in. But those companies often liked all the bells and whistles that we had and the business rules that we had within our system. And so there again was sort of another area where we're essentially offering their employees a way, by still using our service, a way around their company's business rules and business policies. And so there are a whole host of those kinds of issues that you don't necessarily think about. Another thing is the average ticket item is different. And so from a restaurant, they might have been really enthusiastic about business meals, but less enthusiastic about consumer meals. And so how do you deal with that? How do you deal with messaging? And your value proposition starts to change. Also, for a business like ours, where a large part of it is based upon the network of suppliers that you have in geographies outside of certain, a handful, the commercial district where our enterprise platform is a different one than the residential district is. Going back to your comment around the two-tiered network, we launched or expanded based upon we have these enterprise relationships that helps us to acquire customers. When you're dealing with consumers, you don't necessarily have that leverage, and especially in local businesses where you might have been an amazing service in 9 cities, but when you get to Akron, Ohio, the people in Akron don't really care what you did in New York City. They care about how much business do you actually have in Akron. And then one other piece, which was very important for us, was when you work with businesses, we could sort of algorithmically figure out what the expected volume was going to be from that company. So the company's in X industry, has this many people from our standpoint are going to order through lunch, this many people are going to order dinner, this many people are going to be working on the weekends. This company is known for being in the restructuring area, and restructuring now is sort of the department that's going to be busy, and so we could modify, and we could sort of systematically figure out predictive demand. On the consumer side, you can't really predict that, and so you can't add on 20 restaurants and know you're going to be able to drive enough flow to those 20 restaurants that it's going to be worth their while. And so it skews through your marketing strategy and a whole host of other things. And so it really, for us, it was a challenge. It was a challenge that we navigated through really aggressively for 2 years, between end of 2005 and end of 2007. and then started to really figure out what systems would work and how they would work. But it definitely is a challenge, and I think the most important thing is figure out, at least from our standpoint, it was kind of like, what's your competitive advantage in the marketplace? From my standpoint, Seamlessweb's competitive advantage initially was all of the billing and invoicing and capabilities. And so we made the decision of, we don't need to be the guys to develop the first iPhone application. We don't need to be, not that we didn't want to, but to the extent that we were going to invest our dollars, it was really more of making sure that we have a very, very strong value proposition, but we don't have the resources to be able to compete in every single dimension with every company that may be out there. And so it's really, make sure you're prioritizing things, and make sure that, for us, one of the other incremental reasons that we actually did it, one was because we had a lot of people that were using our platform that asked us to use it. So we knew that we would have some level of demand, although we might not be able to geographically target where that actually was coming from. But another thing is, we looked at the consumer side as a lead generator for our enterprise side. So there were many companies where we didn't know who the decision maker was. They didn't fall in any of our lead lists or anything along those lines. And there was one person at the company. Prior to that, no one at the company was really able to use our system. Once we opened it up and those people were now able to use the system, many of them used it at work or they used it at home, and they said this is a really valuable service, and they were the ones who sort of evangelized it and promoted it to the decision makers at the company. So for us, while they're completely different from a macro perspective, they're highly synergistic from a marketing standpoint and what have you. But I'm happy to talk with you offline. It sounds like an interesting company, and there have been a whole host of them. There was a company named Multex many years ago in the financial services or financial information industry that also initially developed a whole host of financial reports for the investment community, and then allowed people to buy them on sort of a one-off basis, and developed a whole host of marketing strategy. And we looked at a lot of those companies to see how they did it, and spoke with the executives that were in charge of those businesses to think through, to be as aggressive as we could in trying to predict where there would be issues that I'm happy to share with you as time goes on.